It was one of those sweltering August afternoons in Tulsa where the air feels like wet wool against your skin. My girlfriend Chloe and I were driving back from visiting her parents in Broken Arrow, and my old Honda Civic had accumulated what seemed like half of Oklahoma's topsoil in the interior. There's a particular kind of grime that comes from a southern summer. A fine, red dust mixed with dried sweat and the ghost of spilled soda. "We have to stop," Chloe said, running a hand through her dark hair. "I can't sit in this filth for another 40 minutes. I glanced over at her, even annoyed. She was stunning. She was wearing a simple white tank top, and a thin sheen of sweat made the fabric cling to her chest in a way I couldn't stop noticing. The curve of her breasts, the way the neckline gaped just slightly when she leaned forward, that I felt a familiar low pull of desire, completely at odds with the mundane irritation of a dirty car. "There's a QuikTrip off 71st, I said, my eyes flicking back to the road. "They have those self-serve vacuums." She nodded, pulling her hair up into a messy bun, exposing the delicate line of her neck. I watched the muscles in her tan forearm flex. I'd always had a thing for her arms, the way they looked when she was driving, one hand resting lazily on top of the wheel, or how her biceps would subtly tense when she reached for something on a high shelf. Right now, it was a distraction I welcomed from the stifling heat. The QuikTrip was a beacon of fluorescent light and air conditioning. We pulled into the bay next to the vacuum station. I fed a few crumpled dollars into the machine, and the vacuum roared to life with a sound like a dying jet engine. Chloe started on the driver's side, so I took the passenger seat, attacking the grid on the floor mats. That's when I saw him for the first time. He was just standing by the air pump, maybe 50 feet away. A tall, gaunt man in a heavy-looking brown coat. That was all wrong for the weather. He wasn't using the pump. He wasn't getting into a car. He was just watching. His head was tilted, and even from that distance, I could feel the intensity of his gaze. It was fixed on our car. On me. I looked away, focusing on the vacuum hose. It was one of those coiled, heavy-duty things, and I guided it over the mat, watching the dirt disappear. But the dirt wasn't behaving right. Instead of the usual mix of gravel and dried leaves, what the vacuum was pulling up was a fine pale beige sand. It was weird, but not alarming. Maybe it was tracked in from somewhere. I finished the passenger side and moved to the back seats. As I leaned in, my back to the outside, I felt that prickling sensation on my neck, the one that tells you you're being watched. I straightened up and turned. The man was closer now. He'd moved to the edge of the vacuum bay, standing just outside the shadow of the canopy. The sun beat down on his dark hair. He had a long, pale face with deep-set eyes. He wasn't old, but he wasn't young either. There was a strange agelessness to him. He was holding something small and dark in his hands, turning it over and over. "Can I help you?" I called out, the vacuum's roar making me shout. He didn't respond. He just stared, his eyes unblinking. Then he took one step closer into the shade. The temperature seemed to drop a few degrees. Chloe popped her head out of the driver's side door. "What's up?" "That guy," I said, nodding toward him. She followed my gaze. "Who, him? What's his deal?" When we both looked at him, a slow, unnerving smile spread across his face. It didn't reach his eyes. He lifted the object in his hands. It was an old, cracked conch shell, and held it to his ear as if listening to the ocean. "Creepy," Chloe muttered, her voice low. She shuffled further into the car, and I saw her bare foot, the nails painted a chipped crimson, press into the dirty carpet as she moved. The simple, intimate sight of her foot, the delicate bones of her ankle, sent another unwelcome jolt of attraction through me. It felt wrong here, with this stranger watching us. I went back to vacuuming, trying to ignore him, but the sand kept coming. It was pouring out of the mats, from under the seats, a seemingly endless stream of that specific fine-grained sand. I knew this sand. I hadn't seen it in over 20 years. But I knew it was the sand from Crystal Beach, Texas, a place my family visited exactly once, the summer I was 7. We'd driven down from Tulsa in a station wagon that broke down twice. I remembered the gritty feel of it between my toes, the way it got into our picnic cooler and ruined the bologna sandwiches. This was impossible. I shut off the vacuum. The sudden silence was heavy. I looked over. The man was gone. "You okay?" Chloe asked. She was standing outside the car now, brushing off her denim shorts. They were tight, hugging the swell of her hips, and my eyes traced the line from her waist down to her thighs. The fear and the desire were getting tangled up in my gut. a nauseating cocktail. Yeah, I lied. Just, this vacuum is crap that it's not even getting the dirt. She peered into the back seat. It looks cleaner, just feels a little sandy. You have no idea, I thought that we got back in the car. The air conditioning was a blessing. As I pulled out of the QuikTrip and onto 71st Street, my eyes scanned the parking lots, the sidewalks. Nothing. No sign of the gaunt man in the coat. That was seriously weird, Chloe said, buckling her seatbelt. The strap slid between her breasts and I found myself staring, the image of the man's hollow eyes superimposed over the side of her. My knuckles were white on the steering wheel. Just a weirdo, I said, trying to sound nonchalant. Tulsa's full of them. But I couldn't shake it. The sand, how? I hadn't been to the Gulf Coast since that one childhood trip. That beach had been wiped away by a hurricane a few years later. Anyway, it didn't exist anymore. That should have been the end of it. A strange afternoon. A story to tell friends over a beer. But it wasn't. 2 days later, I was getting out of my car after work, and I saw a single, perfect line of that same pale beige sand leading from my driver's side door to the front steps of my apartment building. As if someone had carefully poured it there. My heart hammered against my ribs. I looked up and down the street. Empty. Just the oppressive Tulsa heat and the quiet hum of distant traffic. I rushed inside, my skin crawling. Chloe was coming over later. I tried to push the incident out of my mind, to attribute it to some bizarre coincidence. Maybe it was trackable. Maybe it was on my shoes. When she arrived, she was wearing a thin floral print sundress. She kissed me and I could smell her shampoo, something with coconut. It should have been comforting, but my mind was a scrambled mess. As she walked into the kitchen to get a glass of water, I watched the way the dress moved against her body, the fabric clinging to the small of her back, the shift of her hips with each step. I wanted to lose myself in that, in the simple physical reality of her. But the image of the sand kept intruding. You're quiet, she said, leaning against the counter. The stance made the hem of her dress ride up, exposing more of her tan thighs. Long day, I mumbled, coming up behind her and wrapping my arms around her waist, burying my face in her hair. I was holding her too tightly. I knew it. I was trying to anchor myself to something real, something that wasn't sand and staring men. She turned in my arms, a playful smile on her glossy lips. I can think of a way to unwind. We ended up on the couch, the local news droning in the background. Her dress was a puddle on my floor. I was focused on the feel of her skin, the weight of her leg thrown over my hip, the sound of her breathing in my ear. I was trying so hard to be present, to chase away the unease with physical sensation. For a few minutes, it worked. Afterward, she dozed off with her head on my chest. I stared at the ceiling, listening to the quiet sounds of the apartment. The fridge kicked on. A car passed outside. Then another sound. A faint, rhythmic shush, shush, shush. It was the sound of waves. I sat bolt upright, jostling Chloe awake. What? What is it? She mumbled, her voice thick with sleep. Do you hear that? We both listened. Nothing, just the normal hum of a sleeping building. Hear what? She asked, sitting up. The sheet fell away, and the sight of her bare chest, the gentle curve of her breasts in the dim light, was momentarily breathtaking. But the fear was stronger. Nothing, I said, lying back down. I must have been dreaming. But I hadn't been. The sound had been as real as her body next to mine. The next escalation happened at a stoplight. I was driving to the grocery store, alone this time. I glanced in my rearview mirror and my blood went cold. The gaunt man was in the car behind me. He was driving a beat-up, faded blue sedan, his hands at 10 and 2 on the wheel. He wasn't looking at the road. He was looking directly at me in the mirror. His expression was blank, but his eyes were dark pits. I jerked my eyes forward, my heart trying to claw its way out of my throat. The light turned green. I sped through the intersection, taking a sudden, hard right, then 2 lefts, my tires squealing. I checked the mirror. He was gone. I pulled into a random neighborhood and sat there, my hands shaking for 10 minutes. He was following me. When I finally got to the supermarket, I parked as close to the entrance as I could. I was walking through the automatic doors, my head on a swivel, when my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. It was a picture. A grainy, faded color photograph. It showed a little boy building a sandcastle on a beach. The boy was me. I recognized the faded blue swim trunks, the scab on my knee from falling off my bike. In the background of the photo, sitting on a beach towel and watching me, was the gaunt man that he looked exactly the same, not a day older. I dropped my phone. It clattered on the polished floor. A stock boy giving me a concerned look. I snatched it up, my fingers fumbling, and deleted the image. I blocked the number. My breath was coming in short, ragged gasps. This wasn't just weirdness anymore. This was an invasion. This was targeted. I called Chloe. "Hey you," she answered, and I could hear the smile in her voice. "What's up?" I don't know." My voice was trembling. "That guy. From the QuikTrip. I think he's following me." "What? Are you serious? Did you call the police? And tell them what?" "That a man looked at me and my car vacuum sucks up old sand." It sounded insane saying it out loud. "Where are you?" Her voice was sharp with concern. "The Reezer's on 81st. Stay there. I'm coming. I'll meet you inside." I wandered the aisles, a carton of milk in my hand that I didn't remember picking up. Every tall man made me flinch. Every reflection in a freezer door was him. I was drowning in paranoia. When Chloe found me in the cereal aisle, she came straight to me and put her hands on my arms. "Hey, look at me. You're white as a sheet." She was wearing gym clothes, tight black leggings and a cropped tank top. A thin line of sweat glistened on her stomach. I wanted to press my face against her skin, to feel the heat and life of her. Instead, I just stood there frozen. "I got a picture," I whispered. "An old picture. Of me. Sakid. At the beach, and he was in it." Her brow furrowed. "What beach?" "Crystal Beach. In Texas. We went once." "Okay," she said slowly, her mind working. "That's the sand, right? From the vacuum?" I nodded, a wave of relief washing over me that she was connecting the dots, that she wasn't just writing me off as crazy. "This is seriously fucked up," she said, her grip tightening on my arms. "We need to do something. Let's go back to your place. We can figure this out." Back at my apartment, with the doors locked and the blinds drawn, it felt a little safer. Chloe made coffee while I sat at the kitchen table, my head in my hands. She brought over 2 mugs and sat next to me, her leg pressing against mine. The contact was electric, a grounding wire in a storm of fear. "So it's all connected to this one beach," she said, "all business now. What happened there? Did something happen?" I racked my brain. It was a haze of childhood memory, sunburn, the taste of salt water, my dad complaining about the heat. "No, nothing. We built sandcastles. I got stung by a jellyfish. That's it." "The jellyfish," she said as if it were a clue. It wasn't a big deal. It hurt, but I was fine. We sat in silence for a moment. I looked at her profile, the strong line of her jaw, the way her eyelashes cast shadows on her cheek. I was so consumed with fear, but a part of me was still acutely aware of her physical presence. The scent of her perfume mixed with the faint smell of her sweat, the two impulses, to hide in her and to hide from him, were at war inside me. My phone buzzed again on the table. We both jumped. It was another unknown number. This time, it was a video. A short, shaky clip. It was footage of my apartment building, taken from the parking lot. The camera panned up, slowly, until it was focused on my living room window. The video had been taken minutes ago. The camera zoomed in, past the slats of the blinds, and there we were. Me, with my head in my hands. Chloe sitting beside me. He was outside. Right now. Chloe let out a small, choked sound. I was out of my chair, rushing to the window, yanking the blinds open. The parking lot was empty, but on the sidewalk directly below my window, drawn in that same goddamn pale sand, was a perfect, large-scale outline of a jellyfish. I stumbled back from the window, my legs giving way. I hit the floor hard. "We're calling the police." "Right now," Chloe said, her voice trembling but firm. She already had her phone in her hand. "The police." Came. 2 officers, one young and one old. They were polite, professional, and completely useless. We showed them the text, but I deleted the first one and the second number was already disconnected. We told them about the man, the sand, the feeling of being watched. They took notes. They said it sounded like harassment, maybe a prank by someone who knew me. They asked if I had any enemies. I said no. They said they'd increase patrols in the area. They left, and the second the door closed behind them, the feeling of vulnerability returned, thicker than ever. "They think I'm crazy," I said, sinking onto the couch. "I don't," Chloe said, sitting beside me. She put a hand on my knee. I believe you that I saw the sand. I saw the video. Her faith was the only thing holding me together. Night fell that we ordered pizza, but neither of us ate much. That we ended up in my bed, not for sex, but for comfort, lying together in the dark, fully clothed. She was curled against my side, her head on my shoulder. That I could feel the steady rhythm of her breathing, the soft warmth of her body. That I was staring into the darkness, listening for any sound, when my phone lit up on the nightstand. No number this time, just a message. 4 words. Asterisk asterisk. I remember the sting. Asterisk asterisk. A cold terror, pure and absolute, seized me. That it wasn't just that he knew about the beach, that he knew about the jellyfish. The minor, forgotten detail of a childhood vacation. That a pain I hadn't felt in over 2 decades. Chloe was asleep. That I carefully extracted myself from her, my body moving on autopilot. That I walked to the kitchen, poured a glass of water with shaking hands, and drank it standing by the sink, the digital clock on the stove. Read 3:17 a.m. The silence in the apartment was absolute, and then, it was broken. A soft, wet, slapping sound from the hallway outside my front door. Asterisk slap. Pause, slap. Asterisk. It was the sound of bare feet on the cheap carpet of the apartment hallway, but they were wet feet. That I crept to the door, my heart a frantic drum in my ears. That I didn't want to look. That I had to look. That I pressed my eye against the peephole. The hallway was dim, lit by a single flickering bulb, and he was there, the gaunt man. That he was standing directly in front of my door, facing it. That he was shirtless, and his torso was pale and skeletal. His brown coat was gone, his pants were soaked, clinging to his thin legs and dripping onto the carpet, forming a dark, spreading puddle. His feet were bare, caked with that same pale sand. But the worst part.